Empire.
Welcome to Inside the Cap. I'm your host, Joel Corey. You can find me on Twitter at CoreyJoel. That's CorryJoel. And also read my regular CBSSports.com column, Agent's Take on NFL salary cap and contract matters. This week we're going to recap the major deals from this year's trade deadline. The NFL trade deadline passed at Tuesday, 4 p.m. Eastern, November 1. It was the most eventful trade deadline in NFL history. Normally, the trade deadline is anticlimactic or uneventful, but this year we had 11 trades formally executed on Tuesday. That includes the one trade of Roquan Smith being announced on Monday, but not being formally executed until Tuesday. That never happens. Usually there's maybe one move, eventful major move, maybe a couple of minor moves, but nothing like this year. This was similar to what you might see in Major League Baseball or the NBA. I think part of it might be because of the way the new generation of GMs that are younger don't have the same attachment to draft picks that the prior generation did. The older GMs that for the most part aren't in the league anymore, those guys would hold on to draft picks like tooth and nail, would rarely trade them during the middle of the season. You'd be hard pressed to see these guys do anything unless they got a deal which just blew them away. You got teams this year which are in a position where they think they can win a Super Bowl or get there, and they're going for broke. So there were some minor trades which took place, like cornerback Rashad Fenton going from Kansas City to Atlanta for a conditional 7th-round pick. Dean Marlowe, safety, goes from Atlanta to Buffalo for a 7th-round draft choice in 2023. William Jackson, who probably was going to get released by the Commanders, goes to Pittsburgh along with a conditional 7th-round pick in 2025 for a conditional 6th-round pick in 2025. Those are some of the minor moves. Then you have Jeff Wilson, second trade Miami makes, goes from San Francisco to Miami for a 2023 5th-round pick. Jacob Martin, defensive end, goes from the Jets along with a 2024 5th-round pick to Denver for a conditional 4th-round pick in 2024. That kind of makes up for the Bradley Chubb trade we're going to talk about. Buffalo gets Naeem Hines from Indianapolis for Zach Moss and conditional 2023 6th-round pick. Now, let's move on to the bigger trades. And then for Buffalo, that was really, now they got a pass-catching running back they didn't have before. And Buffalo is the odds-on favorite to come out of the AFC. Now, Baltimore made a trade with the Bears, try to shore up a defense which has blown 2 17-point leads. This was getting Roquan Smith from the Chicago Bears for a 2023 2nd-round pick, a 2023 5th-round pick, and A.J. Klein goes over for linebacker Roquan Smith. As we all know, Roquan Smith and the Bears had a very acrimonious contract negotiation during the offseason where he requested a trade. The Bears at the time did not want to trade him. He was holding in during the preseason, and then once contract talks broke off, he came back and he's been a true professional and has been named, was a captain. Second trade the Bears have made in the last few days that last week Robert Quinn went to the Eagles for a fourth-round pick. Just like in that trade, the Bears are eating a ton of salary. Baltimore had about $2.6 million of cap room before the trade, and there was $5,408,333 of salary left on Roquan Smith's 9.735 fifth-year option. So the only way this was going to work is by eating salary. So out of that remaining money, $4,833,333 is being eaten by the Bears. So that means that's only $575,000 of cap space that was needed for Roquan for the rest of the year. Now, this sets up an interesting situation with the Ravens. They only have one tag they can use, franchise or transition. That is earmarked for Lamar Jackson. The tag deadline is March 7th, 2023. That's the last day you can tag somebody. So they're either going to have a 9-game rental for Roquan Smith and let him hit the open market and potentially lose him, or they're going to work out something between now and then, because the only way he gets a franchise tag is if Lamar Jackson gets a deal done. And the hold-up isn't really money, it's guarantees. Lamar has wanted a fully guaranteed contract. Steve Bisciotti, the Ravens owner, has not been willing to give it to him, so something's got to give. Either Bisciotti is going to be willing to give him the fully guaranteed contract, Lamar's going to have some more flexibility. If not, he'll get a franchise tag, and that will be the exclusive tag, most likely, for 45 point, which projects right now to 45.248 million. Now, this kind of gives Roquan Smith some leverage. Roquan wanted to be the highest paid off-ball linebacker in his negotiations with the Bears. So it will be interesting to see, particularly if he has the impact on the defense that they think he will. He's the best off-ball linebacker they've had since they lost C.J. Mosley to the Jets in 2019 free agency. Mosley was someone that the Ravens wanted to retain, did not stick a franchise tag on him. And the Jets just dramatically reset that market. The top of the market was Luke Kuechly at basically about $12.5 a year, and they went to 17 on a 5-year deal for C.J. Mosley with $51 million in overall guarantees, 43 basically fully guaranteed at signing. So top of the linebacker market now is Darius Leonard, and Darius Leonard's deal averages $19.7 million. So presumably Roquan wants to be the first $20 million per year off-ball linebacker. Now, what's interesting about the Bears is they were tracking to have about $100 million in cap room before the Robert Quinn trade. So now, depending upon where the cap comes in next year, could be $225, could be a little higher, $225 million that is. They could have upwards to $115 million of cap space. So they're probably going to be active in free agency. And the way the compensatory picks work is your net losses have to outweigh your gains. And if they're going to be very active in free agency, that was going to leave the Bears two choices: to franchise Roquan Smith again. Franchise him, make him, not again, franchise him, make him the first off-ball linebacker to get a franchise tag since David Harris in 2011. And now it's going to be about $20.5 million. Or just let him go in free agency and get him for nothing. So the compensatory pick compensation they would have gotten at best, there would be no compensatory pick compensation because the free agent gains are going to outweigh the losses. So it was either lose him for nothing or get something now. If they weren't going to franchise, they could have franchised him for the express purpose of trading him, but would they've gotten anything more than what they got now? Probably not in that trade. So it makes sense from that standpoint, particularly since Ryan Poles came out and said signability was an issue based on how things went the last negotiation during the preseason. So that's a move that didn't think it was going to come during the season, but is understandable. Now, Bears are also buyers that after getting rid of their best two defensive players, the Bears went out and got a weapon for Justin Fields as well. The Chase Claypool comes over from Pittsburgh for a 2023 second-round pick. The Bears pick. The Packers were in the mix to get Claypool, and reportedly were willing to give up a second-round pick because they really need to do something with wide receiver and didn't at the trading deadline. Pittsburgh thought that Chicago pick was going to be better for them than the Green Bay pick, although both teams have a 3-5 record. But not all 3-5 records are created equally. Bears, teardown mode, rebuilding. They traded Khalil Mack during the offseason for second and fifth round picks. We're cutting players left and right. Clear rebuild. The Packers have had a stranglehold on the NFC North up until this year. They were the preseason favorite to win the NFC North. They lost 4 games last year, 13-4. Had home field in the NFC. And they've lost 5 games already, 3-5. So Minnesota 6-1. They're just looking at a wild card spot most likely, unless Minnesota implodes and they can get their act together. But they stood pat. Makes me wonder whether they just weren't going. They're going to go so far. Out for a second-round pick for Claypool. That's uncharacteristic for Green Bay. Green Bay is a team which believes in drafting and developing. They don't make trades at the trading deadline. It's been over a decade since they've done something like that. But if they really wanted Claypool, would they have thrown in a late round pick to sweeten it or something? Outside of getting Odell Beckham Jr., they're going to have to rely on those young receivers, Christian Watson, Romeo Doubs, etc. Hope that Sammy Watkins can stay healthy. They get Randall Cobb back. But disappointment from the Green Bay fan base that they did not make a move. This helps Chicago in terms of their evaluating process with Justin Fields to see if he is actually their long-term solution at quarterback. They got Darnell Mooney on the other side. Now Claypool. They traded for N'Keal Harry in the preseason, so they'll get a chance to see if Fields is the guy. They're going to add more weapons in the offseason, presumably, or beef up the offensive line, which will help in the evaluation process. But this trade was partially done because it's going to be slim pickings in the free agent market for wide receivers. Any receiver worth his salt signed an extension, and they all got paid. You had 4 wide receivers making $20 million per year or more. Now you're up to 14. And that includes Julio Jones getting released. So you're not going to have the receiver market that you potentially could have had if some of these guys didn't sign extensions. Plus, may not be the same type of year in the draft for receivers that we've seen the past couple of years. So getting a young receiver who is under contract through 2023 may be the best thing. The guy who's going to benefit, looks like he's going to benefit the most from the limited supply may be Juju Smith-Schuster or Michael Thomas, assuming he gets traded, cut with the foot-toe injuries. Hasn't really done anything since he signed his contract extension. I think that was in 2020. But receiver market is not going to be strong, so this makes sense on one level for Chicago to go out and get Chase Claypool. Now, there's another trade which involved a wide receiver, which is really interesting. Calvin Ridley, who is suspended for the year for betting on games last year, which is the big taboo in the NFL. His contract told. He's supposed to be in his 5th-year option for $11.116 million. That told, which means Fifth-year option was supposed to take place in 2022 and now takes place in 2023. Also, my understanding is that the option, which is fully guaranteed, the guarantee is voided with the suspension, so that's now unsecured money. But the way the trade is listed on the transaction sheets, it's a conditional fifth-round pick in 2023 and a conditional fourth-round pick in 2024. This could be the 2023 pick could drop to a sixth-round pick if he's not reinstated by a certain date, according to reports. And the fourth-round pick becomes a third-round pick based on him hitting certain playtime thresholds, or could be as high as a second-round pick if he signs a contract extension. Ridley's turning 28 in December, but in 2020 he had his breakout year. 90 catches, 1,374 yards, and 9 touchdowns. So this is a true number one receiver that Jacksonville has potentially gotten. There are no cap charges this year because his salary is not counting on the books for now. There's no 2022 cap charge. But once he's reinstated, that $11.116 million goes on to Jacksonville's books. I don't recall a suspended player being traded, particularly one who was suspended for an entire season. That's probably the biggest surprise of the trades that we had at the trading deadline. Interdivision trades aren't the norm in the NFL. Two of the more prominent NFL interdivision trades have involved quarterbacks. Back in 2002, after the Patriots won a Super Bowl with a young Tom Brady, Drew Bledsoe, who had been the longtime starter, was traded to Buffalo Bills, involving a first-round pick. Then the Eagles, when they got rid of Donovan McNabb, traded him to the Commanders. That's in the division. We had one of those on Tuesday as well. T.J. Hawkinson stays in the NFC North, and he goes from the Detroit Lions, who are 1-6, to the Minnesota Vikings, who are leading the division at 6-1. So Minnesota traded a second-round pick in 2023 and a third-round pick in 2024 for Hawkinson, a 2023 fourth-round pick, and a conditional 2024 fourth-round pick. So that's a 2023 third-round pick and a conditional 2024 fourth-round pick, which drops to a fifth-round pick if the Vikings win a playoff game. I'm not sure if that's a 2022 playoff win or 2023 or any playoff win. But those are the reports on the conditions on the trade. Now, typically, you try to keep your best young players. Hawkinson is in his third year. Was Pro Bowl tight end in 2020 in the NFC, and that was partially because the two guys who made it impossible to go to the Pro Bowl, George Kittle was hurt and Zach Ertz was hurt. So that opened up spots, and Hawkinson, the year the Pro Bowl wasn't played because of the pandemic, was named as the starter. So this is interesting to me from a Lions standpoint that they're going to be in contention for the first overall pick next year. We'll probably take a quarterback. Tight ends are a security blanket for young quarterbacks. Dan Campbell, when he played in the NFL, the Lions head coach, was a tight end. Trades a tight end. Signifies to me that, one, they're not afraid of facing T.J. Hawkinson twice a year. And two, they had no intention of paying him the going rate for upper echelon tight ends. Now, to me, this deal, if it was ever going to get done, got more complicated because of David Njoku, who is having a better year than he's ever had before now that he's not splitting time with Austin Hooper at tight end. He was franchised by Cleveland, and the Browns gave him a 4-year deal for base value that averages $13,687,500. So to me, that was going to be the floor for Hockenson. Hockenson is in his third year. He's played 3 years, I should say. He's in year 4. And next year there's a 5th-year option for $9.392 million. So that's fully guaranteed, 5th-year option. So I guess Minnesota's going to be more comfortable paying Hockenson in that territory as opposed to the Lions. Now, for Minnesota, this is the end of Irv Smith's time in Minnesota. And less than ideal circumstances for Irv Smith. And this is part of the reason the trade was made. Irv Smith, high ankle sprain, put on IR, out anywhere from 8 to 12 weeks, season most likely over. He's in a contract year. Last year missed the season because of meniscus tear. Basically being injured for the better part of 2 seasons is not ideal when you're trying to go into free agency. But the Vikings obviously feel that they can get to a Super Bowl. You don't make this trade without thinking so. But they got Dalvin Cook at running back, Justin Jefferson, Adam Thielen, and now T.J. Hockenson at tight end. So this just makes that offense more potent. Now, last but not least will be the Bradley Chubb trade. And Bradley Chubb was someone that came into this year needing to have a really good year, because in 2021, Bradley Chubb had slowed by ankle injuries, ankle surgeries, and didn't get a sack in the 7 games he's played. Then this is a guy that his whole career has been kind of injured. 12 sacks as a rookie in 2018, played 4 games in 2019, tore his left ACL. 2020, came back to earn Pro Bowl honors. So with that spotty history, the Broncos are having him play on his 5th-year option this year. There's no way that you were going to extend this guy. So he's playing on a $12.716 million 5th-year option. And he's having arguably the best year of his career. 5.5 sacks in 8 games. So Miami is going for broke. 5-3 Dolphins, not been shy about making trades. And the Miami Dolphins, in order to get Bradley Chubb, and also got a 5th-round pick in 2025 in the process, gave up running back Chase Edmonds, who'd fallen out of favor in Miami. San Francisco's 2023 first-round pick, and that's from them moving down so that the Niners could take Trey Lance, and a 4th-round pick in 2024. For Denver, there's a team that unless things turn around dramatically, not making the playoffs. So they gave up mortgage the farm for Russell Wilson. Didn't have a 1st-round pick in 2023 or a 2nd-round pick in 2023. So this is a way to recoup some draft capital. They now get back into the 1st round in 2023. Something that doesn't happen very often with trades is if a guy's in a contract year like Chubb, is you get a deal done. Doesn't happen too often. I remember in 2018, right around Labor Day, Khalil Mack was traded from the Raiders to the Bears. Contract was done within 48 hours. Jamal Adams, when he was traded in the preseason a couple of years ago, no contract done. Mid-season trade for Jalen Ramsey, 2019, going from the Jaguars to the Rams, no contract done. More often than not, the contract isn't done. There's Dolphins had permission to talk to Chubb's agent to work out parameters of a contract to see if it's going to. And that was probably to see if it's going to make sense that we can get something done for the contract before we make the trade, because they may have had reservations about not knowing what the asking price was or what they were looking for. But less than 72 hours later, or really 48 hours later, you get a new contract. And Chubb's now signed to a 5-year extension, $410 million, averaging $22 million per year. There's 63,212,444,000 total guarantees based on reports from Pro Football Talk. Just piecing the contract together. $33,462,444 fully guaranteed. By next March, that jumps to $53,212,444, which will be, that's a practical guarantee. That last $10 million is just an injury guarantee. The last $10 million in guaranteed money of the 2025, $10 million of the 2025 base salary is just guaranteed for injury. This makes Chubb the 6th highest paid edge rusher by average yearly salary. And given the durability concerns, there's a risk here. When he's healthy, this makes sense. This is a guy that injury history, better for this to really work out from a compensation standpoint and also the new contract, he better stay healthy. One thing that is in this contract, which I thought would be given the durability concerns, is they're pretty significant per game roster bonuses. And by that, you have to be on the active roster each game to earn the money in the per game roster bonuses. So the Dolphins will get cap relief and also save money if Chubb does not stay healthy. And starting in 2024, running through 2027, there's $680,000 in per game roster bonuses annually. So that's $40,000 per game of per game roster bonuses. So that makes that something I expected in the deal. There's Pro Bowl incentives of $250 per year for making the Pro Bowl, being named the Pro Bowl. You know, there's no Pro Bowl game which is being played anymore. To me, looks like the most important data point was Max Crosby, that he signed back in March an extension with the Raiders, 4-year extension averaging $23.5 million per year. So that's the latest young pass rusher deal in the marketplace. So that probably factored in the equation. Figured the way Chubb was playing this year, the deal was going to have a 2 in front of it. The first number is at least going to be $20 million per year. Got a long-term pass rusher now to go with getting Tyreek Hill pre-draft in a trade, which has changed the offense. Looks like Tua Tagovailoa is going to be the long-term solution at quarterback. That was a question mark going into this year. So at some point, you're going to have him on a long-term deal. He's not eligible for one until the end of the regular season. Whether he gets one or plays out year 4 on the rookie contract remains to be seen. But this was probably the biggest deal of trading deadline day. One guy who's probably really happy about this deal is Brian Burns. The Panthers decided that they were going to keep certain core players after trading Christian McCaffrey to the 49ers. And Burns was the guy that drew the most interest. There were reports that the Rams, who did not make a trade, surprisingly, given their F them picks philosophy, offered 2024 and 2025 first-round picks. Well, that's 2 first-round picks, but that's probably not going to help the current regime. Scott Fitterer, the GM, may or may not be around in 2024, 2025. So those picks, granted the first round picks, wouldn't necessarily help his cause. Matt Rule was fired earlier in the season, so there's going to be a new head coach. They're trying to keep their core intact for presumably the rookie quarterback they get. So with their 2-6 record, wonder if David Tepper, the owner, wasn't all that upset that they missed the extra point and then the subsequent field goal in overtime, which could have made the whole NFC South 3-5, partially because DJ Moore celebrating in the end zone after a miraculous, basically Hail Mary catch from P.J. Walker tied the game. In the 15-yard celebration penalty made a 48-yard extra point, which was missed. So was Tepper like, hey, nice effort. Glad we're 2-6. Makes it easier for us to get the draft pick, or they really want to go to 3-5. But either way, quarterback's going to be their main priority in the offseason and keeping the core intact. But Burns doesn't have the injury history that Chubb has. Named to the Pro Bowl as a starting NFC last year. So $22 million per year now serves as a floor for Brian Burns for when the Carolina Panthers negotiate his extension. He's in his fourth year. So next year is Burns will be on a fifth-year option. So I would expect a Burns deal to get done sometime in the off season, and they'll be able to pay him because they're not going to have any money invested in quarterback in Carolina, not significant money. And Burns' fifth-year option is $16.012 million. But Packers couldn't get a wide receiver, which was surprising. Dallas was sniffing around Brandon Cooks and didn't make a trade for them. From an optical standpoint, maybe it's better they didn't, because you thought $20 million per year was too much to keep Amari Cooper. He's scheduled to make $20 million this year. You basically, instead of cutting him, took what you could from the Browns. Then instead of just restructuring him to create cap room, if you go out and get Brandon Cooks, who's got a fully guaranteed $18 million base salary next year because of the extension he did, optically that would have been interesting. But that's probably the main reason Brandon Cooks wasn't traded, trying to deal with that $18 million per year fully guaranteed base salary. That's probably why Green Bay wasn't really in on him. Plus, the reports are that the Texans had an insane asking price, wanted more than a second-round pick for him. And Cooks wasn't very happy that he wasn't traded. The Rams stood pat and involved the action this year at the trading deadline, which I also think they're partially responsible for, because the NFL is a copycat league, that by sacrificing premium picks, that they won a Super Bowl last year, and teams, at least now, it seems like the philosophy is if we think we can add a piece that can get us over the hump, we are. So we saw that more so this year than the other year. So the more teams out there making trades, it wasn't to the Rams' advantage in terms of trying to make a trade. It wasn't for lack of trying. They were in the mix for Christian McCaffrey, were outbid by the 49ers, but couldn't get another running back in place. They got the second worst rushing attack in the league. They're 31st in yards per carry and 31st in yards per game. So that's a glaring need. Cam Akers has been disgruntled, didn't want to be there, but now it seems like he's mended fences. Kareem Hunt was supposedly available from the Browns, and they wanted a fourth-round pick. The Rams don't have a fourth-round pick, though, from 2023. That went in the Sonny Michel trade in 2021 preseason, so that just made that harder. Tampa didn't make a trade. They're 3-4. They're just out of first place behind the Falcons in the NFC South. That's a winnable division if they can somehow turn it around. But just like the Rams, they have multiple holes. So they have the worst running game in the NFL, but still have a hole with Rob Gronkowski retiring, and now Shaq Barrett, their best edge rusher, tore his Achilles. They're standing pat. So those are two teams, along with the Packers, that were thought to be favorites heading in the preseason, or heading the regular season for the NFC. None of them above 500, and all three could miss the playoffs. I don't see all three making the playoffs. I'd say that the Buccaneers probably have the best shot because they're in the worst division in football, could get hot and win it. But never expected that this week's tilt between the Buccaneers and the Rams feature two teams under 500 and might be a wild card elimination game instead of being a game which could have implications on who has the home field advantage in the NFC. But okay, that's going to be it for this week's Inside the Cap as we recap the trading deadline. Don't forget you can find me on Twitter at Corey Joel. That's CORRYJOEL. And also in the regular CBSSports.com column, Agents Taking NFL Salary Cap Matters. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you back here next time.